Welcome, everybody, to the 5th annual Off the Cuff Selection Sunday Show. I am Adam Banks, coming at you live from Lexington, Kentucky, and I am joined by my professional sports panel, Chad Rainwater, Jordan Conatser, Zach Hahn, and I will get to all of these guys in just a second. But let me just say that March Madness has officially begun, and this is my favorite series to do here on the podcast. I'm very excited, and the brackets are officially out. And sorry about the delay coming to you guys. This is actually technically a Tuesday night, but the games have not even started, so we technically are giving you guys enough time to listen to the show and listen to our predictions before you fill out your brackets. But first off, let me just say hello to Mr. Zach Hahn. You heard him on the 200th episode. He did a fabulous interview. Zach, man, welcome back.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be on the other side of the microphone tonight. To just give you some picks. I appreciate you having me back. 5th annual already. That's crazy.
It's amazing, and we're very excited. Jordan Conatser is the next dude up. Jordan, I call you the basketball guru, man. You know a lot about sports, and I love to have your expertise joining us. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm happy to be back. This is, have I done this show every year now?
I mean, we've done this show. This is the
4
5th annual, and I think that you guys have been on 4 of the 5.
It's my favorite time of year. I love doing the show. I love being here with you all, so appreciate you having me.
No problem at all. And then I have Chad Rainwater. And Chad, I believe the last time that you were on the show, you were fatherless, and now you have a new son into the world, Cannon. Chad, man, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having us back on the show, man. I can't believe it's already been a year since we've been on.
It has been. How old is Cannon now?
He's 7 months. He turned 7 months on the 4th.
Yeah. Well, congrats, man.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Today, we are going to talk about who got snubbed out of the tournament, who you are surprised to see in the tournament. We're going to talk about key games. We're going to talk about upsets, and we're going to give you guys our Final Four prediction, and we're going to talk about the coaching carousel, which is full swinging right now, because this is the year where coaches get hired and coaches get fired. So let's start off by talking about who got snubbed into the tournament. Zach, who do you think got snubbed?
Well, there were several teams. ESPN or the big timers, the quote unquote professionals in this business will have been going on about Oklahoma State, and then they've lost 14 games. So I'm not even going to give them any more mention. My team that I wish was in there's 2. Louisville, obviously, a little personal bias there as well. But Middle Tennessee State, I wish they'd have gotten in. All they did was lose 1 game to Western Kentucky in their conference tournament, and now they're nowhere to be found. Having those small conference teams in there, I think that just makes for exciting basketball in March, and that's what March Madness is all about. So I would have liked to see them get in over Oklahoma or Arizona State. I mean, that's just would they finish 9th in their conference?
Yeah, you mentioned Louisville, and Louisville, after all of the junk that they have been through this last year, possibly having to deal with the biggest college basketball scandal of all time, the Katina Powell stripper ordeal. It is sad to see them not make it into the tournament, because it kind of would have been a Cinderella story for Louisville after getting their 2013 title vacated. And not only that, but getting the last 4 or 5 seasons vacated.
What? Yeah, absolutely.
I would have loved to have seen Louisville in this year. I'm not a Louisville fan, of course. I'm a Kentucky fan, but seeing Louisville in the tournament is definitely it makes it that much more fun to have more teams from the state in the tournament, because we've only got us and Murray State are the only 2 teams from Kentucky in the tournament this year, and we've been used to seeing up to 4 teams in it every year. So
absolutely, I was hoping to see like a Louisville. Kentucky did end up getting a 5 seed. I think Kentucky-Louisville 5-12 game would have been great. The committee's all about ratings. I'm surprised they didn't go with that. And Louisville, they had 20 wins. They got an interesting team this year with Mahmoud and King. And they're interesting team. I think they would have been a lot more exciting to watch than Syracuse or.
And then they find themselves now in the NIT. Chad, who else do you see very surprised?
Well, I was going to go off the Louisville. I was going to pick Louisville wasn't my team that they got snubbed, but you have to feel bad for Louisville. I mean, as much as we can all agree that we basically hate Louisville, but it's been a rough year. It's been a rough couple of months for Louisville, actually, and for them to get snubbed out like that, you still kind of feel bad for them, feel bad for the players. But I was going to say USC out of the Pac-12, they finished second in their conference, and a team like Arizona State, who finished 8th or 9th in their conference, you kind of wonder how they got the bid over USC.
Yeah.
I mean, and USC went to the tournament, the Pac-12 tournament championship. They got beat pretty bad by Arizona, but you look at those two teams, and I mean, without looking at their schedules, you would have to say that their strength of schedules have to be fairly close. And for USC to have 23 wins and to get snubbed out like that, I don't know. That's one of the teams that I feel like should have got in.
You know who I am surprised to see in the tournament, and this is an SEC school. Now, as powerful of a conference that the SEC is this year, Texas A&M is a school that I'm very surprised to see in. And I wrote this down because it's just a few little stats that I wrote down about Texas A&M. Not only did they get in, but they ended up with a 7 seed. They found themselves at a 7 seed. They are 20-12 overall, 50% in the SEC. They got swept by LSU, and which is one of the lowest ranked teams in the conference. And then, like I said, you don't just see them in the tournament; you see them at number 7.
Yeah. Well, I'm as big a fan as SEC fan as anybody at this table, and I'm sure that we're all want SEC basketball to be great. But I gotta say, the committee seems like they overvalued SEC basketball a little bit this year, putting, like you said, Texas A&M at 7. Arkansas is another team that I didn't find that impressive. They're 7. So we'll see if that pans out. I mean, Missouri, there was a question whether they'd get in at all. They're an 8 with Michael Porter. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you feel like the SEC was a little overrated here? Do you think the SEC basketball was that much better this year?
Honestly, I think the SEC stands in this tournament where it should. Last year, the SEC wasn't that good, but there's so many top recruits now coming to the SEC, and last year it was a young year. The entire SEC was so young. But this year, there's a little bit more experience. Texas A&M, like y'all were saying, they've got their guard. He's a freshman. I can't think of his name. And then they have Robert Williams. They've got a solid team. They have the shooting. They have the big men down low. I think they could do some damage in the tournament. But, you know, the SEC with Alabama just looks great this year, in my opinion. Missouri has looked good for the most part of the year, and then they get Michael Porter Jr. back for the tournament. That could be really scary if he could get out and start playing. Arkansas, I wasn't high on Arkansas this year, but it kind of is what it is. And then I have Auburn going out quick. I don't like Auburn's team this year. I think it was a fluke that they've won as many games as they did.
They've really dropped off as of late, though.
They have.
Well, you talk about Missouri and Michael Porter. I think that's the greatest storyline for the whole entire tournament. We've only seen Michael Porter play 25 minutes of basketball this season, and now he's back into the tournament. So if Michael Porter is as good as what everybody says that he is, then you could see Missouri making a little run into the tournament. I have Missouri winning their first game against Florida State. It's an 8 and 9. But then, they got Xavier next, the number 1 seed. So they're going to run into some competition there.
I've got Missouri in my Elite 8. The one thing that scares me about Missouri is with the addition of Michael Porter Jr. And in the SEC tournament, he took like 16 or 18 shots, something like that, something crazy. So he's going to change the entire look of that team, something that you weren't used to seeing the entire year. So we'll see if the team can rally around and then it can work like that. Because all you're seeing is a lot of isolation with him. So I'm kind of curious to see how that works. I hope it works out well for him.
Looking at the bracket as a whole, after we got it all filled out here, what games are you guys excited to watch in this second round?
Oh, am I up first on this?
Yeah, Chad, what do you have?
Let's see here. Going off my bracket here. Wait, hold on a second. That's not even my bracket. That's a blank one. That's a blank one there.
You said first or second round, Adam, right?
I said first or second round, yes.
I could say there's a few games that actually stick out to me, but to be honest, one of the games I'm most excited to watch, and I'm not being a homer, but it has to be Kentucky and Davis. I mean, you realize that right now that is the most likely 5-12 seed.
I know it.
Upset.
It's scary. Jay Billis actually picked Davidson to beat Kentucky this year, which I found surprising. I mean, it's not totally out of the realm of possibility, but I still found it surprising, especially looking at my bracket when I go over my Final Four and you see how far I took Kentucky.
It's one of those games that, to me, is a little hard to predict, Adam, because, I did a little research on the Wildcats of Davidson, Steph Curry's alma mater. They had 2 games this year where they've made more than 20 threes. They had 26 threes in one game. So it's almost like if they come out and shoot like that, they could beat anybody.
But we have the best 3-point perimeter defense in the country.
We have that length.
I'm not too scared about that.
I'm not that worried about it either.
Like they said, we're really good at defending a 3, and there hasn't really, other than Florida in our last regular season game, there hasn't been another game I could think of that we've gotten beat by the 3-pointer. I mean, that's the only game that's really killed us on the threes. But like Zach said, Davidson comes in with crazy shooters, man. A good 3-point shooting team. The number 1 free throw shooting team in the country. I don't think that would actually be a factor in the game, really. I don't think that would hurt us. But the thing I'm worried about the most is this game, can it become an away game? Apparently in Boise, a lot of the locals are going to the game, and they're going to be rooting for the underdog.
Yeah.
So how many Davidson fans for that one night are going to be cheering against Kentucky? That's the thing I'm worried about the most.
Well, I just got back from St. Louis. I watched the SEC tournament, which was amazing. If you guys have never been to the SEC tournament to watch it and you're a college basketball fan, you need to go because it will be the best trip of your life. But what I discovered at the SEC tournament is, and it really isn't a surprise, if you don't like Kentucky, if you're not a fan, if you're not a true blue fan, you are not going to root for them if there's just a Kentucky playing a random team. You're always going to root for that random team. You're never going to root for Kentucky if you're not a Kentucky fan, and that's going to be the case in the tournament. Anyone who is there that's not a Kentucky fan will be rooting against Kentucky. So, I'm excited to see the Cincinnati versus Georgia State game. You got Mick Cronin versus my man, Ron Hunter, in the tournament. Finally back into the NCAA tournament. I'm excited. He's reminds me of Sinbad from First Kid. And you guys know who Sinbad is, obviously, the 90s comedian. But Ron Hunter, he made such an impact a couple years ago when he was he popped into the NCAA tournament. His son made that buzzer beater shot, and he got so excited he flipped up out of his chair and hurt his leg.
Yeah, was he on a chair? He was on a scooter. Wasn't he on wasn't he ever injured or something? Or
he injured himself in the conference tournament,
and he fell off his little scooter.
And he had a scooter that he sat on, and when his son made the shot, he fell off the scooter. And it was so funny because he was he couldn't get up because he was so hurt, and he wanted to run out there and celebrate. But I'm glad to see him in, and I'm excited to see them play. But unfortunately, I do have him losing against Cincinnati. And I know that Cincinnati is the city of losers, and I don't mean that to any disrespect towards the Cincinnati Reds, but Cincinnati is the city of losers. I mean, the Reds,
look how good the Bengals are right now.
I mean, yeah, just
Marvin Lewis does big things in Cincinnati.
Point proven.
2 more years to do them.
Yeah, but Jordan, what is your most exciting game you got on the first 2 rounds there?
I've got a couple that I'm really excited to watch, and this is just speculation that these teams do make it out of the first round. Kentucky, Arizona. I think that'll be a great game if that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Kentucky's got enough to stop DeAndre Ayton. I think Arizona will ultimately beat Kentucky in that one. Another one is Xavier, Missouri. I think that would be a good game. And then Villanova and Alabama. I would really enjoy watching that. So those are my 3 most anticipated games of watching.
I got Nova, actually. You mentioned Nova. Nova's my first number 1 seed to fall this year. So I've got Nova falling to Virginia Tech, Buzz Williams. I look at college basketball teams kind of like I do horse racing. When I'm picking a horse race, when I'm picking a race, I always look at who the jockey is. When I'm picking a game in a basketball tournament, I always look to see who the coach is. And you got Buzz Williams versus the Virginia
Jay
coach,
Villanova
Villanova coach Jay Wright, who
yeah.
is a wonderful coach. I mean, he was a national champion just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think Buzz versus Jay, I'm going to go Buzz.
See, and I'm kind of the same with you. I like Avery Johnson with Alabama. So I took Alabama over Virginia Tech, but that's going to be a toss-up. But I actually have Alabama beating Villanova, so we're both kind of down on Villanova from the looks of it.
Well, also another game I'm excited to watch is WVU versus Murray State. Murray State's an OVC
Murray
team.
State. You got Murray State beating West Virginia?
I've got Murray State in the elite or in the Sweet 16.
I do not have Murray
Wow,
State.
You guys are big on the Racers.
I do not have Murray State beating West Virginia. I got WVU winning that, but I do think it's going to be a great game to watch. I like watching anytime an OVC basketball team is in the tournament, I'm excited to watch and see how far they do. You know, Zach, you went to Moorhead,
OVC basketball is one of the America's best kept secrets. If you ask me.
Everybody here was in the OVC except for Chad, so two Moorheads and an Eastern.
If you'd have been to an OVC, you should go to an OVC game sometime. I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I've never been. I think it'd be a great experience.
Yeah, Zach and I went to the CBI basketball tournament. Was that last year?
Yeah. And we also, my favorite OVC game, I don't want to, turn this into a OVC. This is NCAA, not an OVC conversation. But when Kenneth Fareed was at Moorhead, I remember Eastern Moorhead's a pretty big rivalry, and just the atmosphere in was it Johnson Arena?
Yep, Johnson Arena.
Oh yeah, that's real college basketball in a way. I mean, because it's such an intimate setting. It's like high school but bigger and more skilled, and you got NBA players out there occasionally.
Let's talk about the one thing that everyone likes to talk about, and that's upsets. When you put 68 teams of any sport in a tournament, you're going to have upsets, especially this year. So I think that I'll start off by talking about what I think the biggest upset of the tournament will be, and that is number 5 Ohio State versus number 12 South Dakota State. You got the South Dakota Jackrabbits superstar Mike Daum, who has scored more than 800 points this season and slapped 51 points in one game against Fort Wayne, and that was a road game. And Ohio State, who is now led by a Nicholasville, Kentucky native, is going to be facing that South Dakota State, and I think he's going to fall. I think South Dakota is going to end up beating Ohio State, and since I'm on the topic, I've got South Dakota taking out number 1 seed Xavier and going all the way to the Elite Eight.
Whoa.
Yeah, so how far do you have, Chad, South Dakota State going?
Well, if you would ask me that about 11 o'clock this morning, I would have said I had South Dakota State being Ohio State. But I filled out a few brackets before I actually got to my final bracket to bring tonight. And I actually have Ohio State beating South Dakota State, so they're not going to make it past the first round.
Yeah.
But like you said, Mike Daum, great player in the Summit League, and I believe that South Dakota State does have what it takes to beat Ohio State. I think they're on like 11-game win streak.
Yeah.
So they're obviously one of the hottest teams in the country, and I mean, don't be surprised if it happens. I'm not a big fan of Ohio State, so if South Dakota State makes a run, that's great for them.
So who is your biggest upset?
Right now, I got New Mexico State. I think New Mexico State, let's see, they play Clemson in the first round. You know, they say 12-5 upsets are big.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest upsets, or most common upsets, and I have New Mexico State beating Clemson in the first round there. And the game below that, I have Charleston beating Auburn. Auburn comes in, great team. They shared the SEC championship.
You guys are bold. You got a 13 seed winning. You got a 12 seed in the Elite Eight.
As open as it is this year, man, anything could happen. You could have 6 or 7 double seeded teams in the Sweet 16. You never know.
Sure, but it's hard to pick which one it is. It's definitely a risk.
Jordan, who do you have as some of your biggest upsets in the first couple rounds?
My the biggest upset I have is the 12-5. I have Murray State going over West Virginia. Let's say I had New Mexico State in one of my brackets over Clemson, and then I had them actually beating Auburn as well. And then another one that I have is the 11th seed Arizona State over TCU.
Okay.
So those are my biggest upsets. I mean, later on in the bracket, I have Missouri, who's an 8 seed, going up and taking out number 1 Xavier. I have Alabama who's a 9 seed, taking out number 1 Villanova. Let's see. And then I have Arizona, the 4 seed, taking out Virginia. I actually don't have any of the number 1 seeds going very far in any of my brackets. So
Yeah. Who's your first number 1 seed to fall?
Xavier to Missouri, and then in the round of 32.
Okay. Well, like I said, Cincinnati is the city of losers, so I mean, I could get behind that. I could definitely get behind that. And Chris Mack, I do want to say, I do think he's gone after this year from Xavier. I do think that he's going to move on to bigger and better things. Possibly, where could I see him going? I think he's going to go to Louisville. And that could be something that could happen. Zach, who do you have as some of your big upsets for the first couple rounds?
Well, probably the most shocking thing I got in my bracket is I got the number 10 seeded Texas Longhorns getting all the way to the Elite Eight. I almost put them in the Final Four, but it's hard to pick them over Virginia. And I like them because they have a trio of freshmen. Everybody knows about Mohamed Bamba, but Jericho Sims and Kerwin Roach, a couple other big names, both of them projected in top 50 on big boards right now with NBA talent. So they've definitely got the talent to do it. And they've also got Shaka Smart. He's the one that brought that talent in. He's got the pedigree. He took VCU to the Final Four, I believe.
Yeah.
A few years. He's a hot name in coaching. Took him a couple of years to get Texas back on the right path, but I think it's an easy seed for them. Nevada, I could see them knocking them off easy. Cincinnati, I think, is pretty weak for a 2 seed. So I think they can make a run. And this one's not as big of an upset overall. It's only 1 seed over the other. But I got to go back to something Jordan said earlier with Arizona over Kentucky. Now, I've got the right Wildcats winning that one, Jordan.
I mean, I hope you're right.
I think that's going to be a really, really ugly game because if you look at the numbers, neither one of those teams is very good from outside 3. I know Kentucky has been recently, but overall pretty bad outside. I think it's going to be just kind of a very physical game. And the reason I think Kentucky would be able to win is because Arizona is just DeAndre Ayton. What Kentucky's going to be able to do in that game is run 3 or 4 guys, Washington, Richards out there, and just hack him the whole time. Just make it really hard for him to do work on the inside and play physical.
I mean, that's been the only thing Nick Richards has been good for this year is might as well just send him out there and let him foul out real quick. So.
Absolutely. That might work against Ayton.
I agree. You know Cal's going to find a way to stop Ayton. If that's the only guy we have to stop on the team, Cal will find a way. Like you said, if it's Nick Richards, if it's Sasha Kalea-Jones, look how good defensively he played in the SEC tournament. I always thought that Sasha Kalea-Jones could end up being like Willie Cauley-Stein if he got more playing time. And, you know, like I said, Cal, he will find a way to stop DeAndre Ayton.
If we wasn't Kentucky fans, do you think that, I mean, because we are biased when it comes to Kentucky, because sometimes we do pick with our heart, not our head. Do you think that we would have picked Davidson over Kentucky as being one of the major upsets? I kind of almost say I would have, because I was really down on UK the first half of the season, and I would have put them going out in the first round. But I've seen how they improved. I personally got to watch them at the SEC, so I know how good they are, especially against a stacked SEC league this year. But I don't know. Would you guys have put Davidson over Kentucky if he wasn't a UK fan?
If I didn't have the Kentucky bias, yeah, of course I would. A lot of years I would have Kentucky as, you know, one of these teams to go out. But especially with John Calipari, he brings teams that play in March.
Yeah.
Every single Calipari team, I don't care what they did in the regular season, they play in March.
Right.
So I've never really seen a coach other than Tom Izzo that has that team that just crazy in March. And you can expect to go to the Elite Eight or the Final Four every year with Cal. So
I don't think I would have because, like I said earlier, what it's going to take for Davidson to win is for them to hit some ridiculous number of threes, and you just really can't predict that. More than likely, they're not going to be able to do that. So I think unless I was biased against Kentucky, if I was biased the other way, then maybe I would have picked them to lose. But, I mean, everybody's got bias on some team. We all have opinions of every team.
Right.
So it's impossible to eliminate bias completely.
How many wins has Davidson had in the tournament other than when they have Steph Curry? Like, how many good seasons, how many good postseason runs have they actually made? Like, how many upsets? I mean, yeah, it could happen, but like Zach said, it's going to take a really good three-point shooting from Davidson for them to upset us. I mean, if I was looking at a bracket and if I wasn't a Kentucky fan, I would say Kentucky just because it's who they are. I mean, just because of the name. Not because I'm a fan, but because of who they are. And like Jordan said, you know that no matter what, Cal's going to have that team ready for the postseason. I I mean, look, in 2014, we were at 8 seed. I mean, no one thought we were going to make a run. But, it's kind of nice to not have the target on your back. It's kind of nice to live a little under the radar.
Yeah.
Because Cal's going to have a good outcome with his team.
Not going to keep you guys waiting any longer. We are going to go around the panel here and talk about our Final Four predictions. Now, you have to keep something in mind here, that this Selection Sunday show is a show about speculation. It's a show about what we think will happen. It's all about your gut. And we like to call these gut brackets because, I don't know about you guys, it took me under 5 minutes to fill out my bracket. Yeah. Because that's kind of what you got to do when you fill out a bracket. You just look at it and you pick something. So, of course, we could be sounding completely just off base when we do our Final Four show. But let's talk about our Final Four. And, Zach, I will start with you. Tell us your Final Four prediction, and if you want, you could kind of tell us the trail of how they got to the Final Four.
So all four?
Yeah, I want all four of your Final Four prediction, and if you want to talk about the trail of how they got there, be my guest.
Okay, I've got, I'll start in the top left there. I guess it's the South region. I've got UVA in there. They're not spectacular. They never are, but I think in a year where maybe the talent at the top is kind of down a little bit, I think that fundamental style, those basketball principles will help the Cavaliers get to the Final Four. I got Michigan. They're a hot hand right now. They've got John Beilein. You talked about coaching pedigree.
Yeah.
He's had a very solid run there.
Yeah.
And I like what the Big Ten did with their conference tournament, playing it a week early. So you got to think Michigan's had
and they look good in the Big Ten.
They've almost had 2 weeks off.
They look good.
That's kind of a big deal to get healthy, get rested, have a lot of practice time. Purdue, again, I guess I'm high on the Big Ten here. I hadn't thought about it, but Purdue, they got a couple of experienced big men. I think it might help them get out a pretty easy East region. Duke, they've got 6 guys that are NBA talents, and Coach K, I think Duke's a pretty solid pick to get over Kansas and get to the Final Four as well.
Okay, and Jordan, let's hear your Final Four.
My Final Four, out of the South, I have Arizona, and I believe DeAndre Ayton's going to throw the rest of his team in his backpack and carry them with him all the way to the Final Four. And then I have North Carolina coming out of the West. The team's got a lot of experience on it, just coming off a national championship. I think they're going to go for the back-to-backs.
Luke May is the best player they got back.
They got Joe Barry back.
Theo Pinson.
Theo Pinson, man, that team's great. Ultimately, all around, and they're experienced. Out of the East, I have Purdue, kind of the same as Zach, and they've got those 2 7-footers that are they're crazy to watch, and it's hard to stop that team. And out of the Midwest, I have Michigan State.
Tom Izzo.
This is, I think this is more so Tom Izzo's year than it ever has been before. I have North Carolina and Michigan State in my championship game, and I think that'll be one heck of a game to watch. It'll be 2 good coaches, and kind of curious to see how it plays out.
You mentioned Michigan State. Tom Izzo's due. He hasn't won a national title since 2000. I mean, for a guy to get as lucky as he is every year in the tournament, I mean, he's bound to eventually cut down some more nets. So it has been 18 years, but he's due.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's got 2 top 10 projected NBA draft talents on his team, and
there's rumors this might be his last season there as well. He might hang it up because of all the controversy at Michigan State. So what better way to go out?
No, he's not leaving.
A couple of weeks ago, or about a month ago when all this came out, I thought he was about to retire right then. That's what the report sounded like. It sounded like he was about to just
hang it up
right there. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Chad. Let's hear it. Final Four prediction.
All right. So out of the South region, in the South region, man, that can go any way. I mean, any team out of that could win that region. But I thought about it. I had Virginia at first, beating Kentucky. Then I changed my mind and put Kentucky over Virginia, just because, Virginia, they had a great season. They 20-1 in the ACC. But I think that I'm not scared of Virginia. I think we could beat them if we get past Arizona. If Kentucky could get past Arizona, I believe we have no problems coming out of the South region. So out of the South, I have Kentucky. In the West region, I went with. Did somebody else say Michigan? Did somebody else?
Yeah, Zach had Michigan.
You have Michigan too.
Yep.
Oh, but we don't know that yet.
Yeah, we haven't got to meet.
All right. Yeah, so I went with Michigan. They're hot right now. They had a great postseason last year. Is last year the season when they had like the plane crash and they had like they were like a number 7 seed and they had like a great run.
Yeah, last year was a plane
Is that
crash.
okay?
Plane crash.
Yeah, they had a plane crash like during their conference tournament.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a really great run. They beat Louisville.
They couldn't get off the runway. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they had they wore their practice jerseys. Didn't
Yeah,
they?
they had
Yeah.
practice jerseys.
Yeah, so I have Michigan coming out of the West. The West is really, other than Michigan and North Carolina in the West, that region is really weak. I do believe that, which I skipped this topic earlier, but I believe Xavier is my first. No, I guess it would be. Never mind. Forget what I just said. But I do have Michigan coming out of the West, beating Xavier. Wagner coming in with almost 15 points a game, and Abdul Rahman and Charles Matthews. And you forget about Charles Matthews.
Yeah, I wish we had him.
Yeah, we could have used him. This year.
I'm not sure how good he would do this year, but apparently he's really bad at yeah. But apparently he struggled with his free throws. I don't know if that's cost him any games or not, but I did read that he's really bad on free throws this year. But so Michigan State came out of the West. In the East, I have Villanova. You know, they've been here before. They got some great upperclassmen, which are not really upperclassmen, but for nowadays it is. Jalen Brunson, who was on a championship team in 2016. Mikael Bridges.
Yeah.
Both of them averaging over 18 points a game. I really like Nova coming out of the East. In the Midwest, I have Tom Izzo and the Michigan State Spartans beating Kansas. Just because everybody else said it too, is Tom Izzo. You know, he's going to have a great run. And I believe that this year's their year. They make it to the Final Four. Yeah, that's my Final Four right there.
All right, so my Final Four in the East, in the top right bracket, I have Virginia Tech, Buzz Williams. I told you he's going to knock off number 1 seed Villanova. He's also going to have to take down Greg Marshall's Wichita State. Wichita has had great teams in the past, nothing like they have had before. So I do think that Wichita will make it to the second round, but they'll get knocked off by Virginia Tech. And then they're also going to beat an SEC team, Florida. I think Florida is good enough and only good enough to be an Elite Eight team. So Virginia Tech is going to be in the Final Four. In the Midwest, I have the Dookie Blue Devils going to the Final Four. And, of course, like always, Duke is in the easiest bracket. So the Midwest and Omaha, I've got Duke taking out Rhode Island, which Rhode Island would be... I got them taking out Rhode Island. Got them taking out Michigan State. Tom Izzo, your all's favorite. I got Duke taking out Kansas to put him in the Final Four. In the West, I've got Michigan, which seems to be a pattern here tonight. A lot of people taking Michigan. Got Michigan, and then in the South, I got Kentucky in the Final Four. I got Kentucky. Here's their trail. I got Kentucky playing Buffalo, because I don't think Arizona is going to make it out of the first round of the tournament. I got Arizona.
Right.
I think Arizona's going to blow it like they have before. They blow it almost every single year that they have high expectations.
They don't play good in the NCAA.
They don't play good in the NCAA tournament. Sean Miller, I think he's very overrated. I think he's got a lot hanging over him because of this scandal anyway. I think he's going to be very stressed out.
Thanks. You need to enter your bracket on like every big national competition, because if the Final Four comes true, you will win. You'll beat everybody in America.
Where was this prediction at earlier when we talked about our biggest predictions? We had 13 over the 4.
Virginia
You didn't even
Tech
say
in
it.
the Final Four.
He's
crazy, folks. He's crazy.
Yeah.
He's held us hostage here. We can't stop the show.
Yeah, I wanted to save that. I just wanted to save that little knocker. But I have Kentucky beating Buffalo. I think that Kentucky, even if they did play Arizona, I think that Arizona would fall to Kentucky. So I have Kentucky and UVA. Now that is going to be a battle all the way to the end. UVA just lost at their 6-man. What's his name?
Oh, I can't think of his name right now.
I cannot think of
Chad,
his
what's his
Don't
name?
ask me why I'm over here at the refrigerator. I don't know. I looked it up earlier. I was going to write it down. I forgot what it was. But he was averaging about 10 points a game. Apparently, he had gotten really hot here late towards the end of the season. But I think that's what's going to cost West Virginia. He's going to be the key factor. And his name is, let's see, DeAndre Hunter.
DeAndre Hunter. And then I got Kentucky facing Tennessee in the Elite Eight. Now, Tennessee,
That'd be a fun game.
in order to get there, it's an SEC championship rematch. And that scares me.
Time they've played
That makes the fourth time that they've played Tennessee. They've beat us twice. We beat them once when it mattered. I think Tennessee has some of the best defense in all of college basketball this year. They are rocking and rolling with their defense. But I do think that if we do match up with Tennessee, that we will beat them, and that will put us in the Final Four. So Final Four, Kentucky, Michigan, Duke, Virginia Tech. We'll go ahead and say our championship. I got Kentucky versus Duke, and I hate to say it, but I do think that Kentucky is good enough to make it there. But just by watching Kentucky as close as I have this year, I don't think that they're going to win 6 games in a row. So I got them losing to Duke and Duke winning
that'd be devastating.
their 6th national title.
Do you know how bad of a day that I will not show up for that show? Because it's going to be raining. It's going to be 40 degrees, and we're going to have to freaking talk about how Duke beat Kentucky. And you know what? It'll probably be on a buzzer beater. We'll have another 25 years of
Marvin Bagley hitting
hitting a half-court shot. That's what it'll be.
Not even Bagley. If that happens,
it'll be Grayson Allen.
Yeah, it would be Grayson. It would have to be Grayson Allen. I guess.
He will trip a player or run down the court and hit a 3, and they will not call a foul on him, and they will beat us. That's how bad it's going to be.
Okay, Zach.
Strip everybody in the handshake line after the game.
Championship game, who's your champ?
Well, I'm sitting over here dogging on you, but I got to admit I got the Duke Blue Devils as well. I've got them beating UVA, who, if you go back, I had beaten Kentucky. So, all ACC championship. I mean, the ACC is they're just the best at basketball. I hate to admit it. Coach K, Duke, they got 6 NBA players. They got more coming in next year. I think they're going to get it this year, Adam.
Jordan, championship game, who do you got?
Got a championship game of Michigan State, North Carolina. Ultimately, I think Izzo's going to drag his team all the way to the championship game, but I think North Carolina's just got a little bit too much, and they're going to take it back home again. So
back to back.
Back to back. I don't like to say it. I'm not a North Carolina fan, but at least I don't have Duke going very far. I've got Oklahoma taking out Duke in the round of 32.
I like that. I thought about taking Oklahoma. As bad as the season they've had, I can see them beating Duke.
Just a look of, whenever they were showing Trae Young and the team the other day, whenever they picked them in the tournament, and he just looked determined. You could tell, all the teams up jumping around, and he's just, so calm and collective and just sitting there. And you can see how much he's going to want to come in, and I think he's going to play unbelievable. And I could see Oklahoma making a run, so I'm kind of excited to watch that.
All right, Chad, championship game, who you got?
I got Michigan and Villanova. Like I told you earlier, I love Villanova this year. They've been there before. Just a couple years ago, they got the same guys coming. Well, not the same guys, but a few of the guys, the key players coming back. Michigan. The only reason I took Michigan over Kentucky in the Final Four is because I don't want to jinx us. I mean, I didn't want to say Kentucky. I thought about putting Kentucky, but I put Michigan just for maybe that it won't jinx us when it comes to the real thing. So I got Michigan and Nova. I got Villanova winning their second championship in 3 years. So, yeah.
All right, so there you have it, folks. We have told you our Final Four predictions. And before we sign off for the Selection Sunday show, I do want to just mention the coaching carousel, which is in full spin mode right now because coaches are losing their jobs. And Mark Fox is one of those men who is out at Georgia. I think that Georgia is a great landing spot for a coach, and I think that position is going to belong to Thad Matta, the former Ohio State coach. Thad Matta met with Georgia's people today. I think it would be a great hire.
I would love to see Thad Matta in the SEC, and especially at Georgia. I really think that would go well. And honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Rick Pitino land in the SEC. I'd really like to see Rick Pitino back in coaching to where we're going to be playing him as a Kentucky fan. So,
well, we talked about Thad Matta. He retired from Ohio State. He didn't get fired, right?
They
they
held his hand.
It was like Toby when he left.
Yeah. He had health issues. He had a back problem. So what happened? Did those back problems just get cured? I mean, is he just ready to get back into the game?
He was out of Ohio State no matter what. I mean, they had a couple years where they just didn't look good at all. And
yeah.
I mean, pretty much after they lost Solinger, that was kind of the end of Thad Matta's run there. So
you mentioned Rick Pitino. I do think that Rick Pitino, is going to get back into college coaching. I do think that there is going to be someone take a chance on Rick Pitino, and if they do, it's smart. Rick Pitino is one hell of a coach. I think he could put any team into the Final Four. If he went to the Georgia Bulldogs, I think that he could, but I don't think Georgia is going to be his landing spot. I think that belongs to UConn. I think that if any team would hire Pitino, it could be UConn. Remember when everybody thought Kevin Ollie was the second coming of Coach K, and he only won one national. Well, I shouldn't say only won one. He had one good season and really never did anything after that. But I think that
Shabazz Napier.
Yeah, with Calhoun's team still.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So I don't know, but they're saying that Hurley, what's his first name? Not Bobby Hurley, but Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley could be the guy.
Well, you are reaching into the hat full of obscure coaching names tonight and just pulling them out, aren't you?
Yeah, it all really depends on what Dan Hurley does in that Rhode Island game. But I think that if Pitino doesn't go to UConn, I could see it belonging to him.
No one to interrupt or anything, but while we're on the topic of Pitino, yeah, he's a great coach and all, but all he's done, like down Louisville and all this trouble, why would you want to reach out? And why would you think, yeah, he's our man? Well, the one guy we want to get. There's other coaches out there just as good, can do just as good as Rick Pitino.
No, and if
Rick Pitino, Louisville's the only team ever to get their banner taken down.
Yep.
Like, why would you want to be like he's the guy that fit our program?
I couldn't agree with you more, Chad. Even though the NCAA's never said Pitino is officially banned. I mean, if you look at his recent remarks, he won't even take responsibility for.
Why
all those
isn't
things.
he banned? Why is he still able to coach? As much trouble as he's been in, why is he still able to? It's because the NCAA hasn't taken.
He says I'm responsible for hiring all my assistants, but somehow that doesn't extend to when they mess up. Like he says he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it's not one scandal; it's about 4 or 5 separate incidents.
Right.
You guys are acting like we're living in a land full of morality. We're not. We're living in a land full of money making. And when you want to look at college basketball, it's all about money making. Rick Pitino has proven to be a winner, and I think that there will be a team to take a chance with Pitino because he will win, which will in return bring revenue to that college basketball program and also to the school because more recognition, more students, more money, more revenue.
You're right, Adam. We're not living in a land of morality, but it's all about money making so that banner gets taken. And then you got to draw a line somewhere.
Well, the one thing I think will save Pitino, though, is all the scandals and stuff going on around the NCAA right now with Sean Miller out for that one game with the DeAndre Ayton thing. And there's so many teams that the FBI's brought up in these investigations, Kentucky, Michigan State, Duke. There's so many of these players that they're saying are getting paid or they're getting free meals from from agents and stuff like that to where I think that will save Pitino ultimately because there's so many scandals going on at so many different programs. I think that might cancel his out.
Yeah, you're right. The whole sport's on shaky foundations.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the Selection Sunday
What a
show.
negative note to go out on.
It very much is.
The whole sport's crashing now.
Yeah, sports guys. But we will be back. You haven't heard the last of us. We are just now getting started. So you heard our Selection Sunday show. We will be back after the first 2 rounds are played, and we will be talking about what happened there. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm Adam Banks. I want to thank Chad Rainwater, Jordan Conatser, and Zach Hahn for being on the show. We will see you in the next episode.